Hey y'all, it's Morgan, one of your hosts for the Connections podcast. On today's episode, we have Gene Ettison from the United Way of Rutherford County. He's going to talk to us about how incarceration and poverty are so inextricably linked and how people who are coming out of jail and prison struggle to find the resources that they need, and how he uses his personal story of recovery to inspire those coming out of the jail system. Let's check it out.
Welcome to Connections, the podcast from addiction professionals of North Carolina, where we explore the nuances of addiction and mental health through the lens of policy and practice.
We're your hosts,
Sara Howe
and Morgan Coiner, and we're here to help you see how it all connects. We are so excited to be here today live from the APNC 2024 Spring Conference. And as you can hear, not only are we live on site, but we are recording live in front of a studio audience, just like they recorded Friends. So I'm super excited.
We made it. We made it.
Just call me Jennifer Aniston. I'm super excited to be here today with a friend. We're here with Gene Ettison. He works at the United Way of Rutherford County. Gene, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We are excited to have you here to talk a little bit about the importance of caring for our justice-involved folks and the role that plays in the greater behavioral health system, whether it is super specifically justice-involved folks who are struggling with addiction or sort of just how that plays into the addiction crisis that we're facing. So to get us started, tell us just a little bit about like what your day-to-day job is and what your work looks like in the field of reentry.
Yeah, I mean, we all know it works hand in hand for sure. I've been fortunate enough to actually oversee an amazing team of individuals with lived experience. The value of peer supports here in North Carolina has been something that we can't even put a monetary amount to. So just more or less doing prison reach-in, identifying those individuals that's about to return to society, becoming familiar, making relationships, let them know that, hey, I've been in your position as well, that I'm here to offer the resources that I didn't have. Connecting them with the individual peer that ultimately has the best experience with them, working hand in hand with DOC when they come home, offering them the foundation they need, transitional housing, covering that cost, food, clothing, cell phones. When they actually come out, identifying their skills, connecting with work employment, and just really holding their hand for like the first 120 days of their return. And some of them have literally actually got into the field themselves, been great, showing what they can actually do for others.
So I'm curious, you're in Rutherford County, so you're not far from a city, but you're also really in a much smaller community. Mm-hmm. So what does this work look like? I mean, particularly in terms of stigma reduction and being out in the community and connecting those individuals with reentry and helping our community understand that that's important.
Well, United Way of Rutherford County is based in Rutherford, but we've been blessed enough with the type of funding that we can actually service the 7 counties west of North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So we actually work in Burke, Rutherford, Henderson, McDowell, Polk, Transylvania, and Buncombe counties. And those rural counties, very much so, very limited resources. Our peers actually travel to those areas. They'll spend the day there, working hand in hand with law enforcement, going inside of the jails. But it has been a very significant challenge. Of course, Asheville and Buncombe County is resource rich. Mm-hmm. If a person needs food, we can find that, no problem. A person needs treatment, we have amazing partners at ADAC. We have amazing partners over at Neil Doblin that we can connect them with. But in places like Rutherford County, it's a huge struggle. So we actually sometimes we bring them back to Buncombe. We're bringing them to Henderson, and we'll connect them. And some of them have actually thrived, but then some of them actually have not because of their pull back to their actual areas. So the rural areas have been a very big challenge for sure. But overall, the recidivism rate, I can actually say that since this initiative began about 2.5 years ago, we've serviced over 450 people.
Wow. Can we just pause real quick and clap for that?
That's
450 people coming out of jail.
Oh, yeah.
That have received services. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, when we talk about reentry and we talk about rural areas, jail, because they don't really have a huge number returning from prison. So jail does count as reentry in that space. Buncombe is more those individuals coming home from prison. But I think within that 450 individuals, we may have a recidivism rate of maybe 2%. So it's been great.
Holy cow!
Wow.
2%,
and that's the testimony of the power of the peers. To be honest,
Say more about that. Like what are those peers able to do and bring to this that you think is attributed to that low of a recidivism rate?
Oh, it's a level of familiarity. I mean, it's definitely, if you can do it, I can as well. Mm-hmm. And we actually instill that in them. I tell all of our peers to make sure that we're not outworking them. You know, that we tell them, hey, I'm here to help you. And then when they start to actually take advantage, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to outwork you for your sobriety. I'm not going to outwork you for that you to stay free. And they actually take the, hey, they're being serious. And just more or less just walking it out with them. Hey, this is where not really telling them what to do, but showing them how they did it. And it's been a great success so far.
So you mentioned working with law enforcement too, and I'm curious how their attitudes have shifted over time as you've had this program been going longer and longer. How has that changed some of them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that, numbers don't lie. When I talk about law enforcement, I am a person of lived experience myself. I've been incarcerated. I'm 48 today. I went in prison my first time at 16. And so when I have these conversations with law enforcement, some of them remember me, but then some of them like, how dare you? How can you? And I tell them that, your degree, your certification doesn't make you an expert in this field. I've paid my dues. But literally, they see the numbers, they see the impact, they see it in my life, in my peers' life, and they welcome us in. I haven't faced a challenge in reference to law enforcement at all. Honestly, I think that sometimes they become so overwhelmed that they welcome the help at any turn, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of that. That's really...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You've got a really cool initiative right now.
Sure.
I don't remember high crime, high poverty. Is that what...
Yeah.
Tell us about that. You know what I'm asking about because we've talked about it, and I just can't remember what it's called. But tell us a little bit about that grant that you're managing and what you're getting ready to be able to do.
Sure. So we all know that, all of it goes hand in hand. Incarceration, substance abuse treatment. The one piece that people tend to not talk about a lot, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but, school to prison pipeline is a real thing. When you talk about, I work with younger kids that are, 11, 12 years old and have a, understanding of a fourth grader. And, my son himself was making, 50s and 60s. And I would go to the teacher and like, why can't he do this? Why can't he comprehend? They'll say, well, he's supposed to be performing at this level when he reaches 11th grade. And by that time, it's a little too late. So the initiative is actually a Department of Labor grant that was actually funded or granted to Land of Sky Regional Council. It's called Go Places, growth opportunity, progressing, lived experience using peers. It's a multi-state initiative within Buncombe County, Knox County, Tennessee, and Cott County, Tennessee. It's 18 to 24-year-olds, high crime, high poverty census tracts. But it's actually worked to career path. So I empower my peers to say, if I could remove any obstacle in your life, what would you actually want to do as a career? And some of them dream the wildest dreams. Hey, I want to be an animal doctor is what they say. I want. And the thing is that an 18-year-old should understand what a veterinarian is, and they'll say like, I want to be an animal doctor. So I'm gonna say like, I don't care. I just want to make money, and that comes to we talk about an absentee father. A drug addicted mother, or them being the oldest sibling, having to raise their peers, their siblings. These are realities that we face every single day. And the only thing is like, if I could just have a little bit more money, they equate happiness with money. And the thing is, once you start to impact that individual household, there's a ripple effect within the community that now they can provide for themselves. They don't have to go out here and commit crimes. They don't have to turn to substances to actually make ends meet. Now they can actually provide for their family, which now makes the community a little bit more less crime, a little bit less violence, and now you have a ripple effect that affects the entire community 10, 20 years down the road.
And you're starting this, or it has started? So
the initiative at Land of Sky is it's a year old now at this point. The Department of Labor actually granted them $4 million last year, February. The initiative is only to impact 350 people regionally in both states, all three regions. We just surpassed 100 people already. We only supposed to do 38 this year, so we're way advanced.
I think that speaks to the huge need.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how is it working with another state? Do you learn from your peers in Tennessee? Has that been a good collaboration?
Oh yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, the thing is, I don't know how North Carolina became so fortunate, especially Buncombe County and Asheville. They are so resource rich in Buncombe that when I'm having conversations with peers, they're like, "Well, we don't have that," to go. The DMV actually closes at like 3:00 there. They have to actually send off for the regions are so rural, like they have to send off for a Social Security card. They just can't go to the Social Security office. We talk about soft skills trainings, leadership trainings, the Goodwill there. You have to travel about maybe 15 miles to get the Goodwill for those type of things. So it has been an uphill challenge from there, but they've been persevering. They have faced those type of challenges, and then when I have conversation, they're like, they find themselves getting beat down a little bit, like they're not doing their job. They can contribute more because we are so rich, resource rich here in North Carolina. But they've persevered and they keep pushing through, and they've actually enrolled about 50 people on their end. So it's been great.
Nice.
That's awesome. Sarah and I talk a lot on this podcast about the continuum as a whole. And for a long time, I think we've sort of had this straight line where it's prevention, treatment, recovery, and then harm reduction's there, but we're not really sure where it fits in. And I think some of this work that you're talking about, like we're treating an individual or we're supporting them, and that becomes the prevention for that next generation because it's that ripple effect you're talking about, and it just kind of shows how that continuum is not really exactly how we tend to represent it on paper.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to some of like what you see? I just would love to dig in a little bit to that deeper impact that this work has in those communities beyond the individual that's receiving those services.
I mean, and like, again, I have to go back to the fact that, I mean, we definitely know that once a person becomes an adult and it all starts with them having to make a real solid change within themselves. Hey, I really want this. I want to be different. I want a different outcome for my life. But you still have to talk about the 10 years that father wasn't there. You have to talk about where your big brother that actually was the mentor in the household at one point in time is in prison for the rest of his life. Defending a territory that he doesn't even own, through gang violence, because, that's one of the bigger pieces as well. But again, we have seen great success stories, and amazing leaders have came through that actually understand it, to actually teach, governmental bureaucracies like, hey, this is what's actually happened out there. I don't know if you all are seeing it or not. But I continue to say that the one major piece that's missing when we talk about recovery, when we talk about reentry, we talk about, sustainability, are those young adolescents who, I can speak for myself, for instance, like I didn't have a father in the household, but my influence was those individuals that were driving, a Nissan Maxima. When we think about a Nissan Maxima today, the car could have been no more valued than a $3,000 car, but we saw that as wealth, and it takes, it's a sad fact that it actually takes for a person to experience life's traumas, hardships, to realize, to come on the back end and say, you know what, enough is enough. But I feel as though that, prevention needs to start very, very early. I know that we're dealing with, the effects of what's actually been happening, but how do we actually create prevention? And the prevention is actually going in those communities, starting those early adolescent prevention programs. And I empower, anybody that's listening right now, if you have an organization, start to look towards more of those 16 to 18-year-old ranges where you're actually easily influenced by those people around you, because that's going to be the bigger impact. A man that's 60, 70 years old may change his life at that point in time, but what 16-year-old is going to listen to an 80-year-old man or 70-year-old man? You don't really have an influence at that point. Right. You can save yourself, you can impact your family, but how do you actually communicate with a 16 or 18-year-old? So that's where it all starts for me.
So before we go to audience questions, I want to just give you one more question, which is for anybody who's listening, who's maybe just coming out and maybe they're not in a county where they have that peer support. What message would you say to them?
Remember your worst day. Remember the pain. Remember those hot dorms. Remember when you couldn't even afford a 35-cent soup. Even if you're not incarcerated, remember your worst day when you were sleeping on somebody's floor, where, you were dope sick and nobody could help you out. You're throwing up, you're laying in your own feces. Don't ever forget that pain. If you have $1 million, you can have all the people pouring into you. Always remember that pain, and I guarantee you'll never want to go back to it. Yeah.
Thank you. It's powerful.
So before we wrap up, you have said a lot, and you've touched on this a bit, but I'd love for you to kind of close on how this work has impacted you and helped you. I mean, you've talked about your story, so how do you continue to do this work?
Yeah. My team all the time tells me that just yesterday, between sessions, I'm out here returning emails, making phone calls. And my team, they're in the audience right now. I want everybody to understand that, again, it goes back to all the variants that I've given thus far. We don't do this for us. I tell them all the time that I find my fulfillment and joy in seeing their lives progress. And any leader worth their salt will say the same. That yes, I'm going to do the work. Yes, I'm going to get a paycheck for it, but I'm going to exceed the hours. I'm going to outwork you to ensure that your life is actually on a good track. I'm going to ensure that you see me leading by example. So I'll say that. I find my joy, I find my fulfillment in seeing my team and others in the field do extremely well, building networks that are not just transactional but are genuine, that I can go to an ADAC and actually have a communication with former employers and say, hey, this is what I need, this is what I've seen in the field, and they actually heed my words and my advice, that we can find collaboration to actually impact the community overall. This is a very selfless work, and if you're in it and you're selfish, we have a place for you, but it won't last long because it's all about relationships. It's all about being genuine.
We're so grateful for you being here.
Thank y'all for having
And
me.
for the work that you do.
It wasn't that bad. I was
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What a great message from Gene. It's a message that can only come from someone who has been there. Our pain can be such a powerful driver in moving us forward to create a life that we're proud of and to being able to serve others who truly, truly need support. What a great episode. Thank you so much to Gene for joining us. We'll see y'all next time. Well, that is a wrap on season 2 of the Connections podcast. What a great season we had with so many awesome guests and so many really important conversations. We will be back in a few weeks with season 3. We've got some awesome guests and some awesome topics lined up for y'all, so we hope that you'll stick around.